To make this documentary, I talked to two learned men about their feelings and opinions on the book of Mice and Men. I also asked whether it should be taught on the GCSE syllabus, and what they said were as follows. Hi.
Oh, hi. Hi. Hi, nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you. Okay, so if you just come this way and we're going to start the documentary just down here. Okay. Okay, thank you very much for being here. So we're here to talk to you about John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men.
Yes.
So this novella was first published in 1937 in America, and it's just swept through, the whole world, and just been a huge, huge book.
Yeah.
So what are your opinions on this book?
Well, I think it's a great read, if I'm honest, and it's very relevant to these kind of modern times, in my opinion, with kind of the prejudice that still remains in our society. So it's a very good book in that sense, but it's just John Steinbeck has really well written this, kind of with characters and relationships, and yeah, so it's a very, very good book.
So as you know, Of Mice and Men is studied throughout the world by GCSE students.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's such a good book to study?
Well, I think they can really kind of learn how to analyse, and as it's studied in English, they can kind of really analyse the underlying themes that are very kind of frequent throughout the book. They really have to kind of go into detail and find those underlying themes. And also with the complex characters, you really need to study them to get kind of fully who they are and what relevance they have, and kind of also with George and Lenny's relationship, they can really kind of study that, and then introducing Candy and all the other kind of characters. And also the historical relevance with it. I mean, if, say, for example, you are studying history, it can very much tie in with the kind of the depression that happened to migrant workers and all of that kind of. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So moving on, John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men has been in the GCSE syllabus around the world for about 20 years now. Why do you think it's still relevant to study today?
Well, I think one of the main themes kind of running through the book is about prejudice towards Lenny, because he has mental impairments, and I mean, for example, Candy only has one hand and he's very kind of low in the social class. So yeah, I mean, it's very relevant. The fact a school, for example, is kind of also almost a mini community that's kind of a mini version of the world in effect, and there is going to be prejudice within that. I mean, first of all, it could be, for example, towards people's hair colours, say, for example, gingers, or say people kind of have the stereotype of dumb blondes. It's very much prejudice, and there is prejudice in schools, and so it's almost relevant with the fact there's kind of prejudice in the book. So yeah.
Friendship is mentioned throughout the book. How's this relevant?
Well, Lenny and George's friendship is a very big part of the book, because Lenny needs George to kind of take care of him and kind of look after him because he's mentally impaired. But also George needs Lenny to kind of keep him going, because without Lenny, they don't have a dream, because it's a lot of it is Lenny's dream, and without that, there's nothing to aim for, as we mentioned before. So you kind of George needs Lenny to keep that dream going, and it shows you how important friendships are. And as a child, you have many friends, and it shows you that you need those friends to keep you going in life. So yeah, it's very relevant.
A couple of days later, I managed to get an interview with Chester Hetherington, a professor of modern-day literature. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Just, I already have another interview today, so just come through here. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. So we're here today to talk about John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. So what are your opinions on this book?
Well, I think it's very well written, a very good book, but I feel it's a bit irrelevant in the modern day, and I don't really understand why it's on the GCSE syllabus.
Okay. Of Mice and Men is taught in the GCSE syllabus for about 20 years now. Do you still think it's relevant to teach it now?
Not really, because I mean, one of the main themes is prejudice, and I believe that prejudice isn't very relevant anymore, because, like, say, people with disabilities or mental impairments, like Lenny, like, they're dealt with well now, and, like, they have support and stuff at school, and also, like, I have ginger hair, and I've never really been made fun of, particularly, or bullied because of it. And yeah, I just don't think it's very relevant anymore.
Dreams and the American dream are talked about throughout the book. Do you still think it's relevant?
Yes and no, because kids obviously have dreams and aspirations in their life now, which are good, but they can be kind of too ambitious, like Lenny and George's dream maybe could have been, and they can become dangerous and like waste their money and time on something that in reality might never really happen or come true. So you've got to be careful with dreams, I think.
One of the main themes of Mice and Men is friendship, Lenny and George's friendship. Do you still think that's relevant to be taught in GCSE?
Not really, because like, well, friends can be good and they're important, and like they can encourage you to do bad things, and like with peer pressure, and that can lead you to a bad future and get you into bad situations, like how Lenny gets George into trouble, and also they can let you down, like with talking behind your back and lying, and I mean George might have partly felt let down by Lenny a bit, but he does have mental impairments and stuff. But also, children at GCSE they already know about friendship, and they know how to make friends and the dangers of friends. So I think that they don't really need to learn about that.
I then asked Benjamin and Chester one final question. So why should we care about Mice and Men?
Well, I think we should care about Mice and Men because, first of all, kids need to learn about the dangers of prejudice and what the effect on other people this has. They need to learn about the importance of dreams and how you need them. You need them for something to strive to in life. And how friendships is one of the most important things in life, and how without them you can be lonely and without much support. So, and this book really highlights them, these aspects, and teaches them.
So why should we care about Of Mice and Men?
Well, some people may care about it, but I do not think that GCSE students need to learn about it, as it doesn't have a lot of relevance to modern day times. Like, nowadays we're a lot closer to equality, and we aren't discriminated against, like, for being different, or we're not as much as people were back then. And also dreams can be dangerous, and by learning about how Lenny and George's dreams kept them going, we'll encourage kids to kind of do the same and have dreams that are too ambitious, and yeah, they don't want to learn that, and yeah. And at GCSE, they already know about friendship and the dangers that come with it, so I think it's a bit pointless learning.
Thank you very much for letting me do those interviews earlier. So moving on, you mentioned in those videos how you thought it was relevant or not, but why do you think it's still on the GCSE syllabus? And do you agree that it should be on there?
Well, I think it should be on the GCSE syllabus, and it has very big relevance to modern times with the prejudiced dreams and friendship as well, as we mentioned in those videos, but also because there's many underlying themes and complex characters, and so pupils will learn how to analyse and look deeper into the meanings of things. I mean, just for example, Candy's dog and how it reflects Candy's character himself. Just looking into that will very much help them.
Yeah, well, I disagree with Benedict, and I think it shouldn't be on the GCSE syllabus, really, because I feel that it doesn't have any relevance to modern times, and I think society nowadays pretty much has equality. Not quite, but I mean, there's not as much prejudice anymore, and that was one of the main themes in the book, really, prejudice, so I feel like the themes aren't very relevant today, like prejudice and dreams and friendship and stuff. I mean, GCSE students already know about friendship, obviously, they're old enough to know about it. And also Steinbeck's view on everything is quite depressing. It's not a very cheerful book, and it doesn't really convey the right message really to GCSE pupils, I don't think so.
So you think it shouldn't be taught to GCSE students because it isn't relevant, but do you think that the book is good and well written?
Well, I think it's a very well written book. It's very good. Steinbeck has clearly thought about all the underlying traits of characters. Like Lenny has a very childlike personality that is not only conveyed when he speaks to people, but also when people speak to him. And also Steinbeck has related characters to multiple things very well. For instance, say Lenny is often compared to animals in parts of the book, and Candy's dog is reflecting Candy himself. But those are reasons to read the book for enjoyment and stuff, but not to read it for educational purposes. I just don't think it has any relevance, and people don't really need to learn about it in school.
I I agree with you, Chester, on those kind of aspects of why it's a good book. I mean, also Steinbeck has really well described things. I mean, he goes into so much detail about, for example, a place. There's almost like stage directions. And I also generally think that the characters have been very well written, and they've very much shown reflect kind of the time of the Depression and what it was like to be a migrant worker. But I mean, I still do disagree with you on the fact that I think you can read it for educational uses, because you mentioned that how it was very like the underlying traits of kind of characters, and that is very good to analyse. And so yeah.
So, in a couple of words, just sum it up.
Well, I think it's a very well written book, and it is very relevant for the kind of for this time actually, with the main themes that we've mentioned before. And also, it's a very good book to kind of analyse and look deeper into, which is why it should be kind of taught to GCSE students who are learning about this kind of thing. So John Steinbeck's really kind of written a very good book in that sense.
Well, I agree partly. I think it's a very, very well written book. It's got a lot of interesting themes. Very good read. But the themes are more kind of relevant in the time that it was written back in the late 1930s. But in the modern day, I don't think it's very relevant, the themes, like with prejudice and everything. So I feel that it doesn't need to be taught at the GCSE level and in the GCSE syllabus, although you may want to read it in your spare time, because it is a very good book. Muy bueno.